Welcome back. I'm Rishabh. In video 1, we set up Playwright and wrote our first test. In this video, we will focus on Playwright locators and learn how to write stable and reliable locators. So here is what we will cover today in this video. So what are locators in Playwright? All the locator strategies provided by Playwright. Then the recommended locators to use in Playwright tests. Then we will do hands-on by writing tests using different locator techniques. And in the end, we'll go through the interview questions that can be asked around locators in Playwright. So, a locator is how Playwright finds and interacts with an element on the page. Whenever you click a button, type into a field, or read text, Playwright needs a locator to identify that element. Why writing a good locator is important? Because good locators can make your tests stable and bad locators can make the test flaky. So UI elements that change frequently like class names get renamed, layouts are updated and UI structure gets modified over time. However, user-facing text and accessibility roles tend to remain stable, which is why locators based on text and roles are more reliable. So what do we mean by role? A role is like an element can be button, link, text box, checkbox, radio, right? So all these are the roles of an element on the UI. So if a user can see and interact with an element on a page, it usually has a role. Playwright provides various locator strategies, but the most recommended is role-based locators. So they are based on accessibility roles and represent how users interact with the page. So if a user sees and clicks a button, Playwright can usually find it by its role. In the given example, page.getByRole button name login, we specify the role as button and use the accessible name to identify which button to click, which is the login button. So the accessible name is the name that assistive technologies like screen readers would use to identify an element. Then we have other techniques as well like get by text, get by label, get by placeholder, get by test ID. So websites usually don't include data test ID attributes by default. So in real projects, you can ask developers to add test IDs when no reliable locator is available. Let's write an automation script to demonstrate different locator strategies. Okay, so this is the first test we wrote in our previous video after completing the setup. For the locators test, I will navigate to the Catalan Cura Healthcare demo website. So it takes us to the login page. Here the login username and password is mentioned as John Doe and this is not a password. So let's try to inspect elements and see what are their locators, what we can use in our playwright test. So if we see the login button, we see that it is of button type and the accessibility name is login. So accessibility name is the name which a user sees on the screen. So here it is login. Now let's see what are the locators for username and password. So okay, so this is inside div. Let me expand this. So we have class, ID, name, placeholder, right? So we can use these attributes as well to identify the elements in Playwright. And similarly for password. So we have, I think, similar attributes in for password as well. So we see that here it is label and inside like for the input we have placeholder, name, ID and other attributes as well. Okay, let's log in into the application and see how the application looks like. So I've entered username and password. Let's hit login button. Okay, so we have a drop down facility, which is fine. Then we have radio buttons, healthcare program. So if we inspect the radio buttons, we see that input type equal to radio, right? So when we use get by role here, we define the role as radio. Similarly, for a button element, the role is button. For a checkbox, the role is checkbox. And for a radio button, the role is radio. Playwright has many predefined roles for different types of elements. So I'm creating a new test in the same file. Let me call it locators test with the async page fixture as the second parameter, as we learned in the previous video. So first we will navigate to the website using the page.goto method, just like we did in our previous test. Okay, so let me copy the URL from the website. Okay, it's done. So let's navigate to the website and inspect the elements. So we have this login button here and its accessible name is login. Now the accessible name is important. It's what users see on the screen and it's also what assistive technologies like screen readers announce. So in this case, the accessible name comes from the visible text inside the button. Now we can see here that Playwright provides various types of roles which we can use for different types of elements. So if we go through the list, it's a long list of elements which we can use. So we are using getByRole for the login button. The first parameter button specifies the role and then we filter by passing name login to target specifically the button with that accessible name. So the page may have a large number of buttons, but we need that specific button whose accessible name is login. That's what this second parameter denotes. So I am making an assertion here to verify the login button is visible. Next, we will write steps to enter the username and password. So when we inspected before, we saw that it has a label, placeholder, and different attributes which we can use. So for username, I will be using get by label. Okay, let's see what's the label. So its label is username only. Okay, so I will use it as it is. And we can use dot fill method to enter the value in this input field. Now similarly for the password field, we will inspect the element. We can see that we have a placeholder value here. So I can use page.getByPlaceholder and pass in the placeholder value, which is password, and our fill method to input the text. The password is, this is not a password. Let me copy it and paste it. Cool. And now we will click the login button. So I can copy the code from above. Fine. Like, cool. Let's now log in into the application and perform some actions. So I will log in using the username and password. Okay, so here we have this radio button. Okay, so we will try to click this radio button none. So now I'm locating a radio button using getByRole with radio as the role. And since there are multiple radio buttons present on the web page, we need to add some filters here, like checked false, which means it will find the radio button which is unchecked. We can define the name as well. The name is none, so it targets the one which is labeled as none. So if we see the radio button none, we see that there are spaces before and after none. So if we give the exact text as none, it will not match. So we can define exact to be false, so which allows for partial text matching. So this way we can locate this none radio button and perform click action to select this option. So let's run this specific test now. I will use the -g parameter followed by the test name to execute just this test instead of running all the tests in the file. So we can provide the test name as locators test. It is running 3 tests via 3 workers. It means it is executing on Chromium, Firefox, and WebKit. But our tests have failed, so let's look at the report. Okay, so we are getting the error strict mode violation. So this get by placeholder is resolving to two elements. Okay, now let's look into the application. So this above field, this also has a placeholder as password, and the below field where we have entered the password, this also has placeholder as password. So this get by placeholder is resolving to two elements. That's what the error is. So in that case, we can use nth. So this nth locator technique is really useful when a single locator matches multiple elements on a web page, and you need to select a specific one by its position. So this is a zero based index, and when we put nth1, it will take the second element matching this locator and enter the value in that input field. So let us now again execute the test. Let's see how it goes. So okay, so our tests have passed this time. Let me change the number of workers in the playwright config.ts file. We can for now comment out the Firefox and WebKit. So let's run a test on Chromium only, and we will try to execute this in headed mode. We can pass the hyphen headed argument to run the test in headed mode, so we can see the browser. Okay, so our browser has opened. It will, okay, it has entered username password. The scenario has passed. So the scenario is running very fast. Let us add some wait after login to see that we are actually logged into the application. It is just for the demo purpose. It's not a good practice to use page.wait for timeout in real projects because it halts the execution just like thread.sleep in Selenium. So Playwright has built-in auto waiting, due to which we rarely need explicit waits. I have added it here just for the demo purpose so we can see what's happening. So now when we run the test, we will be able to see the user successfully logged in. So yes, we see that the user has logged in. So these are the basic locator strategies provided by Playwright. We will cover advanced techniques like chaining and filtering in the next video. Now let's move on to the interview questions. So the first question is, what is a locator in Playwright? Which locator strategy is preferred in Playwright and why? A locator in Playwright is a way to find and interact with elements on a web page. For example, if you want to click a button, type in a text box, or check a checkbox, Playwright needs a way to identify that element. That identification method is called a locator. Now let's come to the second part. The most preferred locator strategy in Playwright is getByRole. Why? Because it follows accessibility standards, which reflects how real users interact with the page. Also, it is more stable than CSS and XPath and therefore reduces the flaky tests. Next question is, how does Playwright's auto weighting work with locators? So let's first understand what is auto weight. So in many automation tools, we manually write weights like thread or sleep, explicit weight, implicit weights. But in Playwright, we need not to write these manual weights. Playwright waits automatically before performing actions. This is called auto weighting. So how does it work? So when we write a statement to click on an element, Playwright does not click immediately. Before clicking, it automatically checks, is the element attached to the DOM? Is it visible? Is it stable? Is it enabled? So only when all these conditions pass, Playwright performs the click. So Playwright locators are smart. They wait for the element to be ready before interacting with it. This is auto waiting. Next question is, why is get by rule recommended over CSS selectors or XPath? So the simple answer is stability and reliability. When we use CSS selectors or XPath, we depend on the page structure. So if a developer changes a div or a class name or hierarchy, the test can break. But get by rule works differently. It finds the element based on their accessibility role, like button, text box, link, checkbox, and their accessible name. So this makes our test more stable, less dependent on the HTML structure, which in turn makes it less likely to break when the UI changes and more aligned with the real user behavior. Next question is, what does nth method do and when would you use it? So the nth method is used when a locator matches multiple elements and we want to select one specific element based on its index. So in simple words, if we say th- if our selector finds many elements, nth helps us pick one by its position. So if there are multiple buttons present on the page and we want to click on a specific button, like fourth button or fifth button, then we can use nth. And when should we use it? So we should use nth when there are multiple elements which have the same role or locator, and there is no unique text or attribute to differentiate between them. Most importantly, nth should not be our first choice. If possible, we should try to make our locator more specific using role, name, text, or test ID. So we should use nth only when selecting by position is truly necessary. And the last question is, what is the difference between page.locator and page.getByRole? So first, page.locator is a general purpose method. It allows us to locate elements using CSS locators or XPath. So basically, page.locator focuses on the HTML structure of the page. On the other hand, page.getByRole is a user-focused locator. It finds elements based on their accessibility role, like button, text box, link, checkbox, and their accessible name. Instead of targeting how the element is built, it targets what the element represents to the user. So, and why does this matter? Because structure changes often. Developer may change classes, divs, structure, or styling, but the role of a button usually remains a button. That's why get by role is more stable and recommended whenever possible. In the next video, we will be covering advanced techniques like chaining and filtering in locators. So that's it for today. If you found this video helpful, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.